we have made so far and working with President Trump and his leadership since he took office. At the southern border, we have obtained near total control with a 95% decrease in daily encounters since President Trump took office. March saw the lowest number of encounters in this nation's history at less than 7,200. There were days in there where we had less than 200 encounters a day, which is absolutely remarkable. And again, that is the lowest number of encounters at the border in this nation's history. Under the previous administration, when Joe Biden was president of the United States, U.S. Customs and Border Protection was at times encountering over 15,000 people per day. This astonishing turnaround is a testament to the resolve and to the leadership of President Trump to make America safe, and to the incredible work of the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security. The secure border has allowed Border Patrol to zero in on the cartels and on illicit activities that are going on. President Trump has designated 6 different cartels and violent criminal gangs as foreign terrorist organizations. This has allowed us to use a whole-of-government approach in how we go after drug traffickers and human traffickers. And in March, fentanyl traffic at the border fell by 54% compared to the previous year. We're enforcing immigration laws to identify, arrest, detain, and remove dangerous illegals from our country. We're prioritizing those who have committed crimes, aliens who are a threat to our public safety and to our national security, especially those who are affiliated with terrorist organizations such as Tren de Aragua and MS-13. This includes those who also have final orders of removal. We've worked to enforce President Trump's America First trade agenda through the U.S. Customs and Border Protection's enforcement. The Biden administration's policies hollowed out our economy and America's industrial base, and it shipped our jobs overseas. President Trump is changing that. His historic actions are proving that tariffs are an effective negotiating tool to address trade imbalances. And in fact, companies are reshoring jobs here every single day. The Department of Homeland Security is reforming, and we're rethinking federal involvement in emergency management. President Trump recently announced that there will be a FEMA Review Council, which I will co-chair with the Department of Defense Secretary. This council is charged with fixing a broken system that's returning power to state emergency management directors and making America safe. We're also taking steps to defend the nation's transportation systems, which are vulnerable to targets and to attacks. The Transportation Security Administration is responsible for ensuring the security of all those who travel. In a single day, there are over 45,000 flights in this country with nearly 2.9 million passengers in the United States. We're fulfilling our obligation to launch Real ID, which happened yesterday, and we follow federal law as it was passed 20 years ago. Validated IDs will secure travel, safeguard our elections, and make sure that we never open a door to an opportunity for another tragedy like 9/11 again. As technology advances, so do the threats to our nation. And that's why cybersecurity is a crucial component of our security measures we're taking seriously and investing in going forward. Countries like Communist China have built the capability and the intent to infiltrate and potentially disrupt our critical infrastructure. But despite these threats, the Biden administration instead used CISA to play politics and to police speech. Under President Trump, we've been working to get CISA back on mission and make sure that they are securing our infrastructure. The Coast Guard is the only branch of the U.S. Armed Services that are under the Department of Homeland Security. It has many missions with specialized needs. And as we secure the southern border, the cartels have shifted their activities out to the maritime borders. The Coast Guard has already surpassed fiscal year 2024 drug interdiction numbers and search and rescue and illegal interdiction. Still, the Coast Guard is facing our greatest readiness challenge since World War II. With Force Design 2028, we will transform the Coast Guard to make it a more agile, capable, and responsive force. And since I took office, one of the responsibilities that I have is reforming the Secret Service. In the wake of the July 13th assassination attempt, we have needs there that I'm hoping you will consider. We've reassessed the Secret Service's needs. We've refocused recruitment away from DEI objectives and instead focused people in on investing in the agency's zero-fail mission. These accomplishments are just a portion of what the Department of Homeland Security has achieved with President Trump's leadership in the last 100 days. And with the support of this committee, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to make this department more efficient and more effective in securing our nation. I'm so grateful to the men and women of the Department department, and they are examples of bravery, patriotism, and dedication. It's our responsibility to continue providing them with resources, training, and equipment that they need to do their jobs. Thank you so much for your support, for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to the discussion.
We tried to tell Mayor Wu her ideas would only make things worse, but she ignored us. Bike lanes, all we got was worse traffic. White Stadium, luxury boxes, and beer gardens, while Boston public schools are closed. Boston's headed in the wrong direction, and a vote against Mayor Wu is a message she can't ignore.
I'm Rebecca St. Amman, Chair of Your City, Your Future Independent Expenditure Political Action Committee. And Your City, Your Future Independent Expenditure Political Action Committee approved and paid for
The opportunity to be here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Madam Secretary. I'd like to first recognize Chair Collins for a round of questioning.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, I want to bring to your attention an important issue that may not yet be one that you've been briefed on. In August of 2023, DHS issued a memo in which the department stated that it had identified more than 270 Chinese-backed illegal marijuana operations in the state of Maine alone, producing up to an estimated $4.3 billion in illicit revenue. These grow houses are primarily run by Chinese organized crime syndicates with ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Our sheriffs and local law enforcement have worked night and day to shut down these grow houses that tend to be located in very rural areas of the state. I hope that the President's more detailed budget request includes funding that can be used to help supplement the county, state, and local law enforcement efforts. DEA has also been involved. IRS has been involved. The FBI is starting to get involved. But DHS obviously has an important role to play. So I hope you will commit today to joining this all-of-government effort to shut down these dangerous illegal grow houses. Undoubtedly, there's human trafficking going on as well. The marijuana is destroying these houses with black mold because it's grown inside to try to hide what is going on. And it's being smuggled to other states. This isn't just a problem in Maine. Some 22 states have similarly found these illegal grow operations with ties to transnational criminal organizations in China.
Thank you, Senator Collins. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention and this important discussion. Obviously, we're very concerned with securing our border and knowing who's coming into our country illegally, but also who's already here. And so you pointing out the fact that we have investments in this country, businesses, and marijuana grow houses that have a presence of ties to the PRC is incredibly alarming. So I agree that we should work together to see what we can do. As you know, the Department of Homeland Security, our mission is to secure the homeland. I tell people quite often that my responsibility lies with everyone who's in this country, comes into this country or leaves, every product that's here that leaves or comes in, and then everything on the internet as well that's communicated or processed. This is alarming that we have China. Not only are they stealing our IP, manipulating their currency, but they're building a presence in this country as well. And so everything that we can do to make sure that we're addressing that and not allowing them to get a foothold within the center of our country and in our important states like Maine is incredibly important. So thank you for bringing it to the attention of everyone today, and I commit to working with you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, as you undoubtedly know, Maine is a great destination for tourists. Last year we had 14.8 million tourism visits. We're a state of only 1.3 million people. I imagine it's similar to some of what you've experienced when you were governor. So Maine is heavily dependent, particularly our hospitality industry and our agricultural employers, on seasonal temporary workers from other countries who come here under the H-2A program for agricultural workers and the H-2B programs for hospitality workers. There's no way that our state of 1.3 million has the workforce to deal with the influx of tourists and to get our crops out of the ground. Our small businesses, our inns, our restaurants, and our hotels are perfect examples of where foreign nationals who come to our country temporarily to benefit from, but also contribute to the American economy in a lawful way, are absolutely critical. I know that some of the visas have been released by the department, and I would ask for your help in expediting the release of the H-2B visas, in particular, given the upcoming tourism season.
Thank you for that question, Senator. And, as you know, the number of visas allowed is set in statute by Congress, but there is some latitude given to the Secretary. So I certainly take your request and know that many others have asked us to go and give as much latitude as possible, and we are certainly considering and willing to consider that going forward.
Thank you. My time has expired, so I'm just going to put one quick item on your radar screen, and that is we're seeing some college students from Canada who go to school in northern Maine at the University of Maine at Presque Isle having difficulty in crossing the border, which they used to be able to do very easily. They're totally legal, they have student visas, but they're being subjected to extensive searches and questioning. I don't want us to discourage Canadian students from studying at the Northern Maine institutions that we have for education. So again, I just want to put that on your radar screen. There are so many others who do deserve scrutiny, but these are duly enrolled Canadian students, and they've been crossing the border for years without trouble, and lately they're being subjected to extensive searches and questioning despite having their visas and other documents in order.
I will certainly look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Murphy.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, AI is an enormous growing industry critical to the future economic health of the country. We have had the benefit over the years of the top talent in AI, researchers, students coming to the United States to help us grow that industry. But for the first time in the last 15 years, there are more top talented individuals and workers in AI leaving the country than coming. And the reason is pretty simple. People who are coming here to work from overseas through the visa program are very uncertain about what their rights are. And that is because of the actions this administration has taken. So I think it's important to get on the record for those individuals who are here currently and those thinking of coming to the United States to work or to study, understand what their rights are. So let me ask you a series of pretty simple questions. Probably the key of right amongst the 5 freedoms is the right to free speech, the right to express your own personal opinion about politics, culture, the economy. Do you believe that you have the right to detain or deport a U.S. citizen for simply expressing their political opinion? A U.S. citizen. No. Do you believe that you have the right to detain or deport a legal permanent resident for expressing their political opinion?
I don't make decisions on legal status here in the United States. The Department of State does that, and I would say that as they've gone through an evaluation of who gets a visa, who gets legal status, green cards. They've been evaluating and discussing how that applies.
Well, I acknowledge that you don't. I acknowledge you don't make them. But if someone is a legal permanent resident of the United States, I'm not talking about an H-1B or a student visa. I'm talking about a legal permanent resident. If you are a legal permanent resident, do you have the right to detain or deport that person simply for expressing their political opinion?
The Department of State makes those decisions, and the Department of Homeland Security.
You make that decision about who you have the right to detain or deport. So you are involved in that? Do you believe the United States? Do you believe the law allows?
The Department of Homeland Security under the Trump administration is enforcing the law, following the constitutional rights of folks who are here as citizens, those who are here legally, and those who are here illegally.
So a legal permanent resident is by definition here legally. Do you believe, I think this is really troubling if you can't answer this simple question, do you believe that the U.S. government can detain and deport a legal permanent resident for expressing a political opinion that the administration disagrees with?
The determination you're asking for is based on things that you are determining that the Secretary of State has considered and evaluated. We don't evaluate that, the administration, along with the partnership with the Department of State, on what is political speech and what's an affiliation with the foreign terrorism.
Do you believe?
That's the difference between
Do you believe
what you're asking. You follow the direction of the Department of
resident for expressing
We have not detained or we have not deported anybody who's a legal permanent resident.
Well, that
Citizen of the United
then
States.
say you don't have the ability to do that.
We have
Clarify that for the millions of.
That is exactly what I'm doing, is that we have followed exactly what the law is, and that we have not detained or deported anybody who's a citizen or has legal status in this country. We are focused on the worst of the worst dangerous
You
criminals.
cannot believe you have.
to get them out of
do
the
not believe you
country.
have the ability to do that.
We have not done that at all, and the Trump administration has no
Well,
plans.
just because you haven't done it doesn't mean that you want to in the
We are
future.
following
Do you
the
believe you have the
law
ability to do
ensure
that or
that
not?
we are doing
I think
the
you are going to have
exact
the
appropriate thing in partnership with the Department of State and in partnership with the Trump administration.
Have you read I assume you have read the Supreme Court decision in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Yes.
That court decision requires the administration to facilitate Kilmar Abrego Garcia's release from El Salvador. Can you describe the steps that you have taken to facilitate this release, and specifically, can you answer as to whether you have reached out to your counterpart in El Salvador to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's release?
Abrego Garcia is a citizen of El Salvador and should never have been in this country and will not be coming back to this country. There is no scenario where Abrego Garcia will be in the United States again. If he were to come back, we would immediately deport him again because he is a terrorist, he's a human smuggler, and he is a wife beater.
You've read the Supreme Court decision. Does the Supreme Court decision not require you to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia?
The Trump administration is complying with all court orders and judges' orders.
Does the Supreme Court order require you to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia?
Is a
Yes or-
citizen of
yes
El
or no?
Salvador. It is up to the president of the El Salvador to make the decision.
You're a defendant
on
in
if
the
he is
case.
coming back. It's been a big topic of conversation between all of us, between the country. When the president visited the United States of America, it was discussed and talked about there. The president has been very clear on this issue, as the Secretary of State, and I have as well. Abrego Garcia is not a citizen of this country and is a dangerous individual who does not belong here.
I will not ask another question.
If
Madam
we were
Chair,
back
but the
in this
discussion-
country, we would immediately.
But the discussion
deport him.
ends when the Supreme Court rules 9-0 that you have to facilitate his release. And the fact that you can't even acknowledge the wording of the order, which commands you to facilitate his release, and you advertise to this committee that you are going to willfully ignore the rule. That is incredibly
true,
chilling
Senator.
the balance of powers
That is not true.
in a democracy that relies on the executive branch to honor decisions made by the highest court of the land.
$1,500 a month if you also take care of a friend or relative at home? No way, right? Most people don't know that there is an easy way.
By the highest court of the land.
Madam Secretary, I'd actually like to take a little bit of my time real quick to turn to an actual Maryland resident. Mr. Abrego Garcia, we need to talk about Rachel Morin. And she was a citizen of Maryland who was brutally raped and murdered in 2023 by another criminal illegal alien from El Salvador who had no business being in the United States. May her story and others like it serve as a reminder to the human cost of unchecked illegal immigration policies, the need to secure our border, and the need to swiftly remove criminal illegal aliens from the United States. Speaking of, let's go back. Take a look at what President Trump inherited. We talked about this earlier, but when Joe Biden took office, there were 3.3 million people on the non-detained docket. When President Trump took office, that number had risen to 7.6 million people on the non-detained docket. When you look at the docket, the President Biden in his administration spent their entire term simply allowing people and aliens to cross the border into our communities. Of those who had been given their final orders of removal, meaning they had their due process, the Biden administration simply sat on their hands instead of actively working to remove those individuals, which created chaos and unfortunately criminal opportunities on our interior. Thankfully, we have new leadership at the White House and a department who will no longer tolerate the subversion of our immigration laws and activities. I think since we're here to talk about the budget today, that's what I'd like to talk about. What do you and your department need, the brave men and women who serve alongside you, in order to secure our border, in order to keep our interior safe from coast to coast, and to continue to make America a safe, secure, and prosperous place to be?
Well, the Department of Homeland Security is tasked with overseeing 23 different components that are pretty broad, and it was formed after 9/11 in response to the terrorist attacks to help us secure our country and everything that's in the interior of our country. The President's budget request, along with reconciliation package, focus on what some of our greatest threats are that face our future and our children and grandchildren's ability to grow up here and to have a future. And that is continuing to secure our border, to make sure we're addressing technology needs that have been neglected for far too long, get our Coast Guard to the standard to what the missions are requiring them to be at to be successful, building more wall, more agents for CBP, more ICE agents and beds so that we can remove illegal criminals out of this country and dangerous individuals that are threatening our public safety. And then also going forward and looking at how we conduct operations on training our law enforcement officers, how we can put CISA back on mission at focusing on cybersecurity. The requests going forward focus in those areas and TSA so that we have the technology upgrades that we need to really make sure that we are doing due diligence to secure our country and the systems that help run our critical infrastructure.
I really appreciate that, and I love that you continue to work on those
Yeah.
this country safe. On that, your predecessor actually refused to call what was going on at the border a crisis. It is clear that's exactly what was happening. You also have shown that coming in, we did not need any new legislation to actually secure the border. You have taken action. President Trump has taken action to secure it. I mean, creating a space that we haven't seen in decades. You've talked about a number of things. One of the things you just mentioned was a border wall. Can you talk about the construction of a border wall and what that would do for the men and women of CBP and overall DHS? I know that we are a nation of immigrants. We're proud of that. We're also a nation of law, and lawlessness has to stop. And I believe that anybody on this dais that locks their door at night should understand the need for a border wall. The American people should have that level of security when they go to sleep at night. So can you talk about the importance of that and kind of how you see that unfolding?
We have currently over 700 miles of border wall on the southern border and infrastructure that is there operating today. Since President Trump has been in office, we've constructed another 77 miles that is in place. That is an inclusion of steel bollard wall that has been built, but also temporary wall that has been put forward with concertina wire and panels, and then also we have some waterborne buoys that are being utilized as well. We have 11 contracts that have been allocated to continue building infrastructure, and then also 5 more that are pending to be allocated to build more miles, to have that infrastructure there to help secure vulnerable areas. Now, the border wall will look different based on what the topography is and the geography is of the area. So there's some areas on the northern border and the southern border and out in our maritime infrastructure that we need that will have technology. It'll utilize Aerostar systems, radio frequencies, satellite systems. Those upgrades just simply haven't been made or prioritized under the last administration and need to be done. So we will use a combination for what's appropriate out there for the topography and working with the local states and tribal areas to make sure that it's something that secures our country, but also is something that they can help support and secure as well.
Thank you for that commitment. Vice Chair Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair Britt, and I look forward to working with you and Ranking Member Murphy in this Congress. Madam Secretary, as Senator Murphy mentioned in his opening statement, Secretary Noem, under your leadership, we have seen you ignore our appropriation laws, our Constitution, common sense, and even basic humanity. And like a lot of Americans, I really have been horrified by the lawlessness and incompetence and cruelty that we have all witnessed. And for all the talk about going after criminals, you have sidetracked DHS staff who are investigating drug dealers, terrorists, human traffickers, and rather than photo ops, we need more of your focus on providing basic diligence, because your crackdown has roped in American citizens and people who are here legally with no criminal record. Now, I'm not going to ask you whether that was right or wrong. I know it's wrong. The world knows it's wrong. And I think the first thing the history is going to say about your leadership is that you were responsible for many of these travesties. So I'm deeply concerned. You've deported a 4-year-old U.S. citizen with cancer. You've disappeared people to a notorious prison in El Salvador. And you have spent $100 million in taxpayer dollars to air TV ads thanking President Trump. That is really reckless. It's unacceptable, and in my opinion, can't continue. The American people are paying for this with our taxpayer dollars and with their most basic rights. Now, in the last 3 months, you have frozen or canceled over $100 billion in funding that was approved by Congress, bipartisan. We are talking about everything from disaster relief to grants that keep people safe. But when my staff has requested information on the status of this unacceptable holdup, the department failed to provide any acceptable justification. This illegal freeze, and it is illegal, it is taking a real toll on communities who are waiting on the investments that Congress has delivered. So will you commit to immediately unpausing these funds?
Well, Senator, thank you for covering a lot of topics there. Let me touch on a few of those right away. What the Trump administration is doing is enforcing the law for the first time. Under the Biden administration,
I'm asking you about the funds.
Illegal aliens were prioritized over American citizens. Now the scales of justice have been leveled, and no one is treated better than anyone else.
Asked you a
Citizens are treated the same, and illegal aliens and criminals are being deported.
Previously, I'm asking you a specific
The grants that you are referencing,
Correct.
The grants that you are referencing have been paused and reevaluated to make sure that they are truly being spent in the way to which they were appropriated.
Well,
many of these grants were being diverted
Madam
into things they
Secretary,
were never intended
these
to.
funds were passed on a bipartisan basis by members.
Absolutely, the Biden administration perverted them in how they used them, diverted them to facilitate illegal immigration, to house people in places like the Roosevelt Hotel, who held illegal criminals
We're
that took the
talking,
life
Madam
of
Chair,
Lincoln
about
Riley.
$100
I think all of us
billion.
have
It is
recognized
not
that the
credible to
victims
me
here
that
are
all
the
the
people who have
recipients
died
of
and
that.
lost their children because
Madam
of this
Secretary,
situation.
it is not credible, Madam Chair. It is not credible that $100 billion is used to break the law. That just cannot be true. And let me change this a little bit. On the other hand, I am very concerned that DHS is now dramatically overspending funding that Congress has not provided. If you were a CEO doing that, I don't think you'd be in your job long. We need accountability and we need answers. And that includes informative responses to oversight questions sent to the department over the last 3 months. I am ranking member on this committee. I have worked with every member of this committee. We take our responsibility serious to fund your department and others. We need to have answers. We need to have accountability, and we need to make sure you're not overspending money that you were not allocated.
Well, thank you for that question. I will be very
not really a
clear in the
question, it's a
fact.
statement.
Do you want me to respond?
Well, you can.
Well, I've worked many jobs in my life, but I also have been a CEO. I've run
I'm not
businesses. I've been a
questioning your
governor.
credentials. I'm
and it is
questioning your spending.
We are prioritizing where our security needs are in this country, and we are hoping that this body will agree that reconciliation is necessary to address the things that have been neglected in this country for too long. That we have the technology upgrades, the manpower upgrades that are necessary. So the $170 billion request for the Department of Homeland Security
Madam
is
Chair, my
incredibly
time is
important
running
to make
out.
sure we
and
have
I
the
do have a
tools that
couple
we
of
need.
additional questions. The fact is that you've not been given this funding. Saying that it's going to come in reconciliation that has not passed is not an acceptable answer. I did want to ask about FEMA and disaster relief. This is really important. A lot of disaster relief has been politicized. You've endorsed eliminating FEMA outright. We have seen an upheaval at FEMA that is going to put lives in jeopardy. 1 in 5 FEMA employees have been pushed out, taking this administration's so-called buyout offer. We are losing indispensable staff just weeks away from fire and hurricane season. And over $100 billion in disaster relief and FEMA grants are still being held up. DHS is making it a lot harder to qualify for relief, something people in my home state of Washington are experiencing firsthand. Multiple requests from governors have been rejected in recent weeks, including a request from our state. And we haven't been given any response about this. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, has President Trump directed you to prioritize funding for Republican states?
Absolutely not.
Have you directed your staff to prioritize funding to Republican-led states over Democratic? Have your staff?
This administration, there will not be any polarization of support given based on politics.
Well,
Every single
I
person
hear-
can take this and it'll be very different than the Biden administration.
I just want to make a statement in the beginning because this chart, which you can't see, but many of us have seen, the blue lines being the number of people that were coming across the border during the Biden administration, and then the red is what you and the president have done over the last 3 months. I say congratulations. Results speak loudly. Not only are migrant encounters down 95%, but the gotaways are down 99%. To put it simply, migrants are just not slipping through. They're not evading our border patrol. I boil it down to 2 basic strategies that the administration has done that the previous administration could have done but totally ignored. One is deterrence. When possible illegals look to the United States and see that we are following through on deportation orders in larger numbers, I think that's a huge deterrence along with other things that are occurring. The other one is enforcement of the